As of April 30, 2026, the world faces a relentless surge in energy prices, sending shockwaves through economies both large and small. From bustling cities to rural communities, the impact is being felt everywhere, with no region left untouched by the crisis. For ordinary people, this means mounting anxiety as they open their utility bills, wait in long lines at gas stations, or struggle to afford groceries. Families are being forced to make difficult decisions, cutting back on essentials, postponing plans, and rethinking daily routines just to cope with the rising costs. Households, businesses, and governments everywhere are feeling the squeeze as fuel and electricity costs soar, pushing up the price of basic goods. Factories are scaling back production, small businesses are struggling to stay afloat, and policymakers are scrambling to find solutions to protect their citizens. The crisis is driven by a severe geopolitical conflict threatening global oil supply, combined with surging post-pandemic demand. Tensions in key oil-producing regions have disrupted supply chains, while the world's appetite for energy has rebounded faster than expected, creating a perfect storm. Fatih Birol of the International Energy Agency calls it the biggest energy crisis in history, with supply and demand thrown out of balance. Experts warn that the effects could last for years, reshaping how nations think about energy security and independence. Terms like unprecedented volatility and systemic risk now dominate reports from the World Bank and IMF. Financial markets are on edge, and investors are bracing for more turbulence as uncertainty continues to mount. This crisis isn't just economic, it's about national security, social stability, and the urgent need for a more resilient energy system. Governments are ramping up security around critical infrastructure, while citizens demand action and investment in renewable energy to prevent future shocks. In this video, we'll break down the causes, impacts, and global responses to the 2026 energy crisis, exploring how the world is adapting to this new era of uncertainty and what it means for our collective future. In the spring of 2026, energy markets are gripped by unprecedented chaos, an environment where uncertainty reigns and every new development sends shockwaves through the global economy. Oil prices are swinging wildly, spiking and plunging with every headline, as traders scramble to make sense of rapidly changing conditions. Brent crude surged to $126 a barrel after a sudden escalation of military tensions in the Middle East, sending shockwaves through the energy sector and rattling investors worldwide. Meanwhile, natural gas prices remain stubbornly high, especially in Europe and Asia, where cold weather and supply constraints have left governments and consumers scrambling to secure enough fuel for the coming months. The ongoing U.S.-Iran U.S.-Iran conflict now threatens vital oil shipments from the Persian Gulf, fueling panic buying and fierce competition for every available barrel as shipping routes become increasingly risky. At the same time, a robust global economic recovery is driving up energy demand, straining already overloaded electricity grids and pushing utilities to the brink as they struggle to keep the lights on during record heat waves. The naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz has created a physical bottleneck, trapping oil tankers and forcing some companies to cut production or even declare force majeure, further tightening global supply. This perfect storm of surging demand, supply disruptions, and escalating geopolitical risk has made markets hypersensitive. Rumors and speculation alone can now move billions of dollars in minutes, amplifying volatility. Businesses and governments everywhere are stuck in a reactive mode, holding emergency meetings and bracing for the next shock as energy costs threaten to spiral out of control. The world economy is now locked in a cycle of uncertainty, with everyday people, companies, and entire nations anxiously watching for signs of relief, or the next crisis. The direct U.S.-Iran conflict has upended the Middle East and sent shockwaves through global energy markets. The U.S. naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is the single biggest driver of today's market instability, threatening millions of barrels of oil daily. Every military move or diplomatic rumor now swings prices, as traders bet on escalation or peace. The war has triggered a currency crisis in Iran and forced energy companies worldwide to plan for long-term disruption. Companies like Repsol are shifting production strategies, expecting shortages to persist. The conflict has redrawn the global energy risk map, making military action a direct factor in energy prices. stability has given way to a new reality. Energy markets now move at the speed of geopolitics. The risk of supply disruption is now a harsh reality. Blockades and bottlenecks are choking global energy flows. The Strait of Hormuz blockade has trapped oil and gas from Gulf producers, forcing a scramble for alternative supplies and driving up prices everywhere. Production cuts and logistical delays are hitting even companies far from the conflict, as equipment and personnel are diverted or delayed. Austria's OMV and others have raised price forecasts, signaling that high prices are here to stay. The crisis exposes the fragility of just-in-time global energy supply chains. Nations are urgently reassessing dependencies, with countries like South Korea and Australia forging new pacts to secure critical resources. The old system of cheap, reliable energy is gone. Security now trumps efficiency. The world is learning the hard way that energy flows can't be taken for granted. The energy crisis is hitting households hard. Fuel prices have soared for weeks, making commuting and travel unaffordable for many. Electricity and heating bills are spiking, forcing families to choose between warmth, food, and other essentials. For low-income and fixed-income households, this is a direct threat to well-being, pushing many into energy poverty. Rising energy costs ripple through the economy, raising prices for food, clothing, and everyday goods. Even those who drive less or conserve power can't escape the squeeze. Costs are embedded in everything. Small businesses are especially vulnerable, with many forced to cut staff or close as utility bills skyrocket. The crisis is eroding local economies and putting jobs at risk. The pain of high energy prices is now a daily reality for millions. Soaring energy prices are fueling inflation, forcing central banks to consider painful interest rate hikes. Developed nations can cushion the blow with subsidies and alternative energy, but developing countries face debt crises and social unrest. The World Bank warns that high energy and food prices could reverse years of progress in vulnerable economies. Governments are rolling out price caps, windfall taxes, and direct support, but these measures are costly and risk distorting markets. Energy giants like BP and Total Energies are posting record profits, while consumers and small businesses struggle. This stark divide is fueling public anger and calls for tougher corporate taxation. The crisis is forcing companies everywhere to rethink risk and prioritize supply chain resilience. The 2026 crisis is fracturing old alliances and forging new ones, reshaping global energy politics. The UAE's dramatic exit from OPEC after nearly 60 years signals a shift toward national interests over cartel unity. OPEC's cohesion is weakened, raising the risk of chaotic, competitive markets. Countries are forming new partnerships, like South Korea and Australia's pact for diesel and LNG, to secure supplies. Europe is racing to diversify away from Russian gas, accelerating new pipeline projects. The crisis is also driving renewed interest in nuclear power, as nations seek reliable, domestically controlled energy. Energy security and climate goals are converging, pushing a pragmatic reassessment of the global energy mix. Governments are scrambling to shield citizens from high prices while tackling the crisis's root causes. Europe has rolled out subsidies and price caps, but these strain budgets and risk blunting incentives for conservation. The IMF warns that such measures, while necessary, can distort markets and fuel debt. There's a renewed push for energy conservation and fast-tracking renewables, now seen as national security priorities. Diplomatically, nations are racing to secure new oil and LNG deals with non-OPEC producers and reliable allies. The crisis has made energy independence a top priority, driving investment in domestic sources and infrastructure. In the US, this means more nuclear and fossil fuel production. In Europe, it's about LNG terminals and cross-border links. The political will to overhaul energy systems has never been stronger. As of April 2026, the world stands at a crossroads, facing two starkly different futures, one marked by continued volatility and uncertainty, the other by the promise of a new, more stable energy paradigm. The escalation of the US-Iran conflict may close the vital Strait of Hormuz, a choke point through which a significant portion of the world's oil flows. Such a closure could send global energy prices soaring to unprecedented highs, disrupting economies and daily life far beyond the region. In contrast, a diplomatic breakthrough however fragile, could ease fears over supply shortages, restore a measure of stability, and help bring prices back down to more manageable levels. Yet, regardless of which path is taken, the crisis has already triggered a profound shift in how nations think about energy. Governments, businesses, and citizens alike are now prioritizing energy security, resilience, and independence as never before. This urgency is accelerating investment in renewable energy sources, nuclear power, and innovative technologies that promise to diversify and strengthen the global energy mix. Upgrades to power grids and infrastructure are underway, aiming to make energy systems smarter, more flexible, and better able to withstand shocks, whether from geopolitics or climate events. Today, the energy transition is no longer just about climate policy or environmental goals. The pain of high prices and supply disruptions is forcing a global rethink of how we produce, distribute, and consume energy. The world is questioning its reliance on fossil fuels, grappling with the consequences of past choices, and searching for new solutions that can deliver both security and sustainability. Will this moment be remembered as just another chapter in the long saga of fossil fuel turmoil, or as the catalyst that finally set us on the path to a more secure, sustainable future? The answer is still unfolding, but one thing is certain: after this crisis, the world will never view energy, or its importance to our lives, the same way again.